out here at my Millennium Feathernet. This is like the 4th or 5th one we've built, so the structure's a little bit different than the one you'd see at Polyface because we keep changing little things. I guess the biggest thing that I've changed on this is the permanent stairway. This thing's awesome. All the other Feathernets have a wooden stairway that sits on the ground, and every time you go to move it, you gotta throw it up inside, but there's always chickens and a feeder in the way, and so I just welded this up out of some old well pipe that was all rusty and was leaking, and I actually tilted the steps backwards a little bit, so if it's raining and there's a bunch of chicken poop on them, when you go to walk down, you don't just slip and fall out down, which was a big problem with some of the other stairs we've had before. So this is really nice, good solid stairway that I don't have to do anything with. And then I put this chicken ramp on the inside. It rests on one of the steel runners over there, and then it's screwed down up here, so this doesn't touch the ground either. So I never have to touch that. The chickens can get up inside. It's fine. The oyster shell, instead of being in a long feeder hanging under where it's really hard to get at, we put two of these bucket feeders, and they're super easy to fill up and last a long time. I don't really think I've changed much up there. I made the nest boxes a little higher. This one, because it's the newest structure that we built here at Polyface, is the tallest one, which I'm really happy about because I always bang my head on the other one. Let's go around the back. Or maybe let's look at the feed buggy first. So, come a little closer. These chickens are loud. On the other Feathernets, we just have, I guess we maybe call it a clevis. It's basically just a big loop that a pin drops through, but the chain can slide back and forth in it. So when you're pulling this and you go to make a corner, the buggy will turn, but the Feathernet won't. So the chain will slide through and you'll get all crooked, and then it's hard to go through a gate or something. So I made this up out of some old bush hog blade. And it's got a slot for the chain to go in. So when I get the center, I'll pick a center link, I'll count the links out to the center. When I hook that up, I know that this Feathernet structure is always going to be right behind my buggy. Hang on, I get this keeper pin back in. And that makes it so much easier to go through a gate. I don't know if I'd use bush hog blade again. I think if you just took an I-beam and took a torch and cut it out, that'd work great. The bush hog blade was kind of hard to weld, but that's what I had. And then my older brother actually designed this lid. Most of these parts have just one giant lid, and they're pretty heavy, and when it blows off, that takes out your net or lands on a chicken or whatever. And it's just a real pain to fill up because you got this giant lid on top. So he designed it with two permanent parts, and then you just take off this little centerpiece, stick your auger in there, fill it up. And I really like this. The only thing I'd change would be to make this a little higher, so it angles up a little more, because right now if it rains, some of this water is going to run inside, and that's not too big of a deal because the chickens eat so much that I'll just feed out the wet stuff. But if you didn't have this many chickens, you could have some feed spoil in there. The chickens really don't care, they'll eat whatever. I mean, they eat rotten stuff all the time. So The other feather nets just have this ramp, but every time you move it, you got to push it up inside because it's gonna, otherwise it'll fall off. So I wired mine up. Super simple, and now I never have to touch this thing. And since you can't back this thing up, you can only pull it. It's not like the Eggmobile. I don't have to have the end lifted up. So that was a super simple thing to do. Some of them have the reel for the hose on the front. So that's kind of a pain because when you start driving, then the hose goes underneath. So I move mine to the back. I just pick this up and throw it up there. It hasn't been worth my time to figure out a way where it moves along. But I do use maple syrup tubing to lengthen my air hose because I can fit way more maple syrup tubing on that than I can air hose. So, I don't know, I've got like 200 feet of air hose and like 300 feet of maple syrup tubing. And if I didn't have the maple syrup tubing on there, I'd only be able to have about 300 feet of air hose. So that allows me to go a lot further and go out in this pasture here where we really don't have any water points. I have one up there on top of the hill. So I've been connected to the same water point for like 2 or 3 weeks because my hose is so long. And we don't get very much flow coming down this hose because it's so small, but it's plenty for the chickens. I think we've got about 750 in here. We could do about 850, but we don't need that many chickens this year. But it keeps up fine and keeps up with the dog too. So I think that's it.